You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 616 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. That song you're hearing right now is, of course, Leave the Lights On from our good friends in Passafire. You can check those guys out anywhere you get your music. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. And so obviously not the easiest of episodes to record over here because, as I'm sure pretty much everyone listening to this is aware, the New York Rangers season just ended in Game 6 in Tampa Bay. Final score of 2-1 Lightning, and the Lightning go to the Stanley Cup Final to play the Colorado Avalanche, looking for their third straight Stanley Cup. And the Rangers, after leading 2-0 in this series, drop 3 consecutive games. And I'm going to do my best here to kind of try to strike that right balance between disappointment, certainly in how the Rangers played in this game here tonight, and really the most recent 4 games in general, but also just gratitude and just kind of, acknowledging how far this team came this season, how much this can benefit them in the long run, because obviously there's a lot of young players on this team. Many of them were playing in the Stanley Cup Final, or the Stanley Cup playoffs, rather. I wish it was the Stanley Cup Final. But playing in the Stanley Cup playoffs for the first time in their careers, and I think a lot of players got invaluable experience out of this. We're also going to talk about Gerard Gallant's heavily controversial and criticized decision to bench Kaapo Kakko, or make him a healthy scratch, rather, in this game after he had played the entire postseason and at times played very well. Obviously, the kid line certainly had its moments during the playoffs, and Kaapo Kakko out of the lineup to make room for guys like Kevin Rooney and Dryden Hunt as well. So we're going to talk about that decision and more specifically why I didn't agree with it. So a little bit of a spoiler there. But I want to start today's episode by kind of just going right to the big finish in this game, that, of course, being the Rangers once again. Okay, I got to compose myself here because I don't know how many times I've been over this on this podcast. And anybody that's been listening to this podcast for any amount of time, you guys already know what I'm about to say and what I'm about to talk about here. Over and over and over these past 3 seasons, and part of the reason for this, I'm sure, is that the Rangers are a very, very young team, very, very inexperienced team. But what episode did I just say this was? I got to look. 600 and something. 616. I think I first mentioned this probably on episode 2. I'm going to have to go back and listen to it at some point to find out exactly when I first talked about this very specific issue that just continues to plague the Rangers. And that issue, say it with me now, the Rangers are not sharp on the shift that immediately follows a goal. And that's been the case several times in this series. I think for the most part in this series, the Rangers mostly got away with it. There were times in this series where they did not have a good shift on the one that immediately followed a goal, but I don't think it led to any Tampa Bay goals, at least not right away, immediately after a goal was scored, until tonight, and until the third period, and until it couldn't have possibly happened at a worse time. The Rangers, despite being outplayed by a fairly wide margin on the night, even saying it that, I think that way, I think is probably being a little bit generous on my part because, they were outplayed by a significant margin by the Tampa Bay Lightning in this game. Despite that, you're down 1-0 for the entire second half of the game. Stamkos made it 1-0 just past the midway point of the second period. And so as a Ranger fan, you're saying, look, we're getting outplayed, but we've been here and we've done that. This team is 5-0 when facing elimination in the playoffs. They scored some ridiculously dramatic goals, certainly against Pittsburgh and also against Carolina as well. And you're down by just 1 goal. And, no matter how badly you're getting outplayed, you are still 1 opportunity away from potentially tying the game. And that's exactly what happened. Frank Vatrano scoring a goal on the power play for the Rangers. And I should actually back up for just a second because this goal scored by Vatrano and the power play in general all came as the result of Alexis Lafreniere making a couple of just ridiculous moves. He gained the blue line for Tampa, over the Tampa blue line there, basically just faked a guy out of his skates, then faked Stamkos out of his skates, and then Stamkos had to kind of grab Lafreniere to prevent him from potentially making a play. The arm goes up, delayed penalty on the Tampa Bay Lightning, and the Rangers go to the power play. Now, the first Ranger power play unit didn't really get a whole lot of scoring opportunities on this man advantage here, and they were out there for about a minute and 30, and then you get a play stoppage. Mika Zibanejad ripped a one-timer at the net, and it was held by Vasilevsky. So you've got an offensive zone draw forthcoming here for the New York Rangers, and you're down to less than 7 minutes remaining in the game. 40 seconds left on the power play, to be exact. And so the Rangers, at this point, the top power play unit had been out there for the entire time. They go to the second power play unit, and that includes Alexis Lafreniere, Barclay Goodrow, Frank Vatrano, Andrew Kopp, and Jacob Trouba. And Andrew Kopp on the dot, good face-off guy. I think it was absolutely the right idea to have him in there taking this face-off here. You need a win. Obviously, the Rangers, we know they can't score even-strength goals. More on that in a little bit. But you got to convert here. This really felt like this was the game. The Rangers had to put one in the net here, and at this point, time's dwindling on the man advantage. So Kopp wins the face-off, clean as a sheet, to his right to Frank Vatrano. And I've been talking about this on this podcast. Vatrano's got an absolutely lethal shot. He absolutely just tattoos it, beats Vasilevsky on the glove side, puts the puck into the twine, and we are tied against all odds, despite, once again, Tampa Bay mostly skating circles around the Rangers for the majority of this night and clearly having the better of play. We are tied with 6:53 left. And then what happens after that? Well, the Rangers give up the game-winning goal, what turned out to be the game-winning goal, exactly 21 seconds after Frank Vatrano scored what was the Rangers' biggest goal of the season. You get a situation where the puck is in the neutral zone. This is on the shift following the Vatrano goal. Alexis Lafreniere shoots it into the attacking zone. Dryden Hunt was in there on the forecheck. The Lightning start to move it out of their zone, move it into the neutral zone there, and you've got Palat, which is an excellent cross-ice pass up the boards on the right side to Kucherov. Kucherov takes the pass in stride. He gains the blue line, and just like that, it's 2-on-1. Jacob Trouba, I don't know what happened here. I mean, I know he's against Steven Stamkos, and Stamkos is a great player, but, man, Stamkos just absolutely toasted him on this play. I mean, Trouba, I don't know if he was just, gasping for oxygen or what the deal was here, but he got absolutely just burnt on this play. And Kucherov, bit of a saucer pass across the ice to Stamkos. Stamkos is going toward the net. It looked like Igor Shesterkin made an excellent he did make an excellent glove save initially. The shot went right into the glove. It kind of hit the bottom of Igor's glove. Lightning quick reflexes there by Igor Shesterkin. Puck bounces out of the bottom portion of his glove, kind of goes into the air, and then Stamkos is still moving toward the net. The puck bounces off of his leg and goes into the net. The Rangers argued, and of course, obviously in this situation, it's worth, stating your case and trying to claim that, that shouldn't be a good goal. But I got no problems with this goal. I think it should absolutely be a good goal. There was no kicking motion or anything like that. I don't think Stamkos really interfered with Igor Shesterkin in any meaningful way there. And so the goal stands, and, a couple of chances down the stretch for the Rangers, but nothing too dangerous, and time runs out on the Rangers in this game and on their season. And just really, really unfortunate. But before I go a second longer, and again, we're going to continue breaking down all the highlights and lowlights from this game, kind of talk about what's in store for Locked On New York Rangers in the offseason, because for sure I know that we picked up some new listeners along the way in this postseason run. I mean, of course, how could we not, right? And that has way more to do with the Rangers than it does to do with me. A lot of people really kind of, got really, really excited about this team and really wanted to be with the Rangers every step of the way. And hey, what better way to do that than by listening to a daily podcast every day? So, like I said, I cannot thank you guys enough for being part of this journey with me. It really was a freaking blast this year. Nobody took this team seriously. Nobody thought they'd even make the playoffs, let alone beat Pittsburgh, let alone beat Carolina, let alone go 5-0 when facing elimination in those two series. And, again, a competitive series against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Other than Game 4, the Rangers were in every game. I mean, this game, Tampa had the better of play, but the Rangers were right there at the end, had a chance, didn't work out. And Tampa Bay Lightning, look, I mean, they're on the verge of a dynasty, and that's the team that finally knocked the Rangers out of the playoffs. So, like I said, we're just kind of getting started here. We're going to continue talking about everything that happened in this game, and we will do that in just a second. But first, I just want to let everybody know, today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Athletic Greens. I use Athletic Greens literally every day. I started taking AG1 because I wanted a supplement that actually tastes great, and I wanted to see what all the hype was about. Now I've been on it for several months, and I love it. It doesn't taste like it's super healthy. It kind of has a mild tropical taste that I actually look forward to each morning. So what is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, energy, recovery, focus, and aging. It's lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free. It costs you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it is cheaper than your cold brew habit. Athletic Greens has over 7,000 5-star reviews. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. All right, just want to thank you guys for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, and we have an important favor to ask you. We've put together a survey so we can learn more about listeners like you and make your favorite Locked On podcasts even better. This is your opportunity to tell us what you like and what you don't like about Locked On Podcasts. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey right now to get started. It won't take very long, and everyone that completes a survey can qualify for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards. To take our audience survey, go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey. Thanks for your help. All right, so we have to go ahead and talk about the decision that everybody was buzzing about before the game, and certainly probably still is even right now. In fact, yeah, I'm on Twitter, and definitely people are still talking about this. And that, of course, is the decision by Gerard Gallant to make Kaapo Kakko a healthy scratch. And I got to be honest here, and let me just preface this whole thing by saying I like Gerard Gallant. I think he's somebody that did an amazing job with this team this season. Obviously, he comes into a team that was basically in chaos. When you look at how last season started with all the Tony DeAngelo stuff, when you look at how last season ended with all the Tom Wilson stuff, it was basically just a mess. And then everything with Dolan and, JD and Jeff Gorton getting fired. Gerard Gallant came in here and not only settled things down, but turned this team into a bona fide cup contender and led them all the way to the Eastern Conference Final. But this, to me, is one of his worst decisions that he's made all season, to make Kaapo Kakko a healthy scratch in this game for a lot of reasons. For starters, we'll look at the short term, and then we'll look at the long term. So for the short term, I fail to see how making Kaapo Kakko a healthy scratch in this game could possibly give you a better chance to win it. And with Kaapo Kakko being a healthy scratch, you've got guys in the lineup like Kevin Rooney and Dryden Hunt. I mean, those are the two that really stand out. Also, Ryan Strome to a lesser extent, because Strome, it's interesting because during the pregame skate, Strome was out there, but then he left the ice and wasn't there for I think they said it was about 7 minutes that he was away from the ice, and they start doing, their pregame rushes, and, I'm checking Twitter, and, who's going to be in and who's going to be out and who's going to play with who, and I'm looking at the line combinations, and I can't even figure out, who's missing here. Okay, Hunt's going to play, so he's in. Looks like Kakko's going to play, so he's not going to be a healthy scratch. It was actually Strome that was missing, at least from this particular tweet that I was looking at. Now, of course, we found out later that Strome was obviously still dealing with this injury. He left the ice to get some work done on that. And then he ends up going back out there and obviously plays in this game. He was in his usual spot with Kopp and Panarin. But Strome was not feeling well in this game. I mean, you could tell. He was not skating very efficiently at all and has had kind of a rough playoff series in the first place. And, of course, he ends up leaving the game with a lower body injury, does not return in the third period, and ends up with just 8 minutes and 46 seconds of ice time for the New York Rangers. So if Strome was, in this bad of a way, and granted, you don't really know for sure exactly how much he's hurting, but I'm sure Gallant knows, and if he ends up missing the game, then I got to imagine this is a somewhat significant injury that prevents him from playing in the third period of a game in which the Rangers must win to continue their season. And so the decision to go with Strome over Kakko is pretty surprising because it's not like Strome has set the world on fire this postseason. I mean, couple of moments here and there, sure, but certainly not a consistent, strong player for the Rangers throughout this postseason run here. And obviously, we all know what happened in Game 5 with him missing that pass from Andrew Kopp. Not a perfect pass, but a pass that Ryan Strome absolutely has to be able to handle, and he's got a wide open net, was not able to take advantage of it. So the idea that the Rangers had to play an injured Strome over Kaapo Kakko, when even a healthy Strome has not really been that great in the playoffs this season, that's a head-scratcher in and of itself. But you know what? Strome, he's been a big part of this team for the last couple of seasons. He's been a top sixer pretty much that entire time. Him and Artemi Panarin have excellent chemistry, so I could at least see the argument like, well, you know what? Strome wants to play in this game. He's been a big part of this team. He's had a hand in this rebuild here and helping this team go from basically kind of a cellar dweller into a cup contender. So he's earned the right to be out there. If you want to make that argument, I don't necessarily agree with that, but if you want to make that argument, I'll at least hear you out and I'll say, okay, that makes sense. I could maybe be talked into that. So we'll let it alone that Ryan Strome was out there for this game and that he dressed for this game. Why are Dryden Hunt and Kevin Rooney both playing in this game over Kaapo Kakko? I can't fathom what the reasoning there would be. And as far as what they did in this game, Kevin Rooney's out there for 8 minutes and 40 seconds, including 46 seconds of shorthanded time. Dryden Hunt was out there for 10 minutes and 58 seconds, did not play at all on special teams. With Rooney, I suppose you could, again, at least make the argument. This is not an argument that I agree with, but you could at least make the argument that the reason that Rooney's out there is, well, he's a valuable player when it comes to the penalty kill, and obviously at Tampa Bay, they got a lot of weapons over there, a lot of guys who could put the puck in the net. It's going to be paramount for the Rangers if they take a penalty to be able to kill off the ensuing power play for the Lightning. I would argue that it's not really necessary to have Rooney out there even just for that, simply because when you look at this Ranger team, there's a lot of forwards who are really good penalty killers. Between Mika Zibanejad, Chris Kreider, Barclay Goodrow, Tyler Mott, Andrew Kopp, there's plenty of guys who you can put out there on the PK and, not necessarily miss Kevin Rooney. Nothing against Kevin Rooney, but Kaapo Kakko's got to be out there instead of him. And Dryden Hunt, your guess is as good as mine. I guess the one thing you could say there is, well, this has been a grueling run for the Rangers. They're about to play, their 20th game in the last 40 days. It might be good to have somebody out there with fresh legs, but come on. Dryden Hunt, at best, is a career journeyman, and he ended up playing a bigger role for the Rangers this year than I think a lot of people thought that he would, and props to him for that. Kaapo Kakko is the former number 2 overall pick in the playoffs, and somebody that is, this is the best way to look at it. Let's ask Tampa Bay who they would like the Rangers to scratch in this game. Do you think they would say, scratch Dryden Hunt or scratch Kaapo Kakko? Which one of them do you think that they would be happiest to see not be on the ice? I would imagine it would probably be Kaapo Kakko. And Kakko's played well in the playoffs. He hasn't lit it up as far as points are concerned, but nevertheless, he's been a driving force on a lot of the sustained pressure by the kid line in the offensive zone. He's been really strong along the boards. He's had his moments here and there, and this kind of leads me into what I also want to talk about, the big picture ramifications here. And I realize this is a game that the Rangers have to win, and you can't worry about hurting people's feelings and this, that, and the other thing. Kaapo Kakko has played well in the playoffs. He's the former number 2 overall pick, and you sit him down for guys like Dryden Hunt and Kevin Rooney. That is not a good idea. In a perfect world, Kaapo Kakko is a building block of this New York Ranger franchise and somebody that will play a major role in a Stanley Cup winning team in the next couple of years here. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. Look, it's a long way back to the Eastern Conference Finals. I know the Rangers have a great team, but we're a long way from getting back to that point. But Kaapo Kakko, again, this is somebody, the Rangers have a lot of eggs in the Kaapo Kakko basket, and you do this to him with the team facing elimination when Kakko, as far as I could tell, has not done anything wrong. There's games where maybe he's not as noticeable as other games, but I don't think he's had a terrible game in this postseason. I don't think he's done anything to really hurt the Rangers. It's just that there's nights where he's not as noticeable as other nights, but I don't think he's done anything that's a detriment to the team. I think he's a better defensive forward than he gets credit for, and I just can't possibly get on board with this. This is something that could really kind of damage his confidence going forward, and you do that to put Dryden Hunt in the lineup, to put Kevin Rooney in the lineup. Kevin Rooney is an unrestricted free agent. Maybe he's back with the Rangers, maybe not. I think there's a very good chance that he walks. I get the feeling the Rangers will fill out their roster with some inexpensive players as far as bottom six forward roles are concerned next season. And, Rooney, he's not going to get like a major contract, but he could get like $2 million, $2.5 million a season, and the Rangers might pass on that. And he's got to be out there instead of Kaapo Kakko, and Dryden Hunt's got to be out there instead of Kaapo Kakko. Dryden Hunt had been a healthy scratch since Game 3 against Pittsburgh. Can't follow the logic here. If you told me, or any Ranger fan, that one of these three players, Kaapo Kakko or Kevin Rooney or Dryden Hunt, is going to make a big impact in this game and potentially, win it for the Rangers, have a big hand in the Rangers winning this game, I think everybody would say Kaapo Kakko. So cannot understand this decision by Gerard Gallant. And I'm not going to sit here and say, oh man, if Kakko had played, Rangers definitely would have won. I can't possibly say that, but I can definitely say I think they would have had a better chance to win than by making him a healthy scratch. That's the short-term issue that I have with it, and the long-term damage, Kakko, he'll get over it, probably, but I just don't like doing that to a player that, again, has played some of the best hockey of his career, and you yank him off the ice. I think Kaapo Kakko had earned the right, as has every other New York Ranger that's been a part of this playoff run, to see this thing through to the end, and he wasn't given the chance to do that, and the Rangers couldn't get anything going offensively, and again, have wrap up their season scoring just one even strength goal in the last 4 games. So we're going to continue talking about this in just a second, but first, just want to let everybody know, today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by BetOnline.net. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, news, and odds, including this year's basketball championship matchup, the NHL Hockey Conference Finals, Major League Baseball, and of course, all the latest fighting news from MMA and UFC to boxing. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so yeah, I think the complete undoing of the Rangers in this series was obviously just the complete inability to do anything at 5v5 play. And it wasn't just the fact that they weren't scoring goals. I mean, 1 goal in 4 games at 5v5 is absolutely ridiculous. I can't imagine. I have to look back to know this for sure. I can't imagine that happened once all season for the Rangers. Rangers were a high-scoring team, and I can't imagine there was a situation in the regular season where they went 4 straight games with a total of 1 even-strength goal. And you know what? Think about the 1 even-strength goal that they had. It was Ryan Lindgren in the last game, Game 5. And again, as I mentioned in that episode, I wouldn't want to call that a fluke, but it kind of was, because he just threw the puck from along the boards toward the net, caught Vasilevsky by surprise, and scored. And that's the only goal. That goal that they did score, the only one at 5v5 in these last 4 games, wasn't the result of the Rangers, making these excellent passes and winning all these board battles and doing everything they could to keep a play alive. It was just a defenseman that pinched in, got to a puck that was by itself and just threw it toward the net. So, yeah, not good. And it's unfortunate because a lot of the Rangers star players, a lot of them had big-time runs in the postseason. Mika Zibanejad, I thought, had a great postseason. Adam Fox, for the most part, did as well. Chris Kreider, a little bit hot and cold. It was kind of the old Chris Kreider coming back to fruition here, where he's just kind of, one game looking dangerous, other games he's barely even out there. But the Rangers really needed their stars to step up, specifically in this Game 6 here tonight with them facing elimination, and also, to a lesser extent, this last handful of games as well. It is a cliche, but it's very, very true. It's something we talked about with Gil Martin when I was on Locked On NHL a while back. When you're in the playoffs, your best players need to be your absolute best players, and they need to be at the top of their game. I don't think Panarin was ever really at the top of his game, and again, he had his moments. Obviously, the Game 7 overtimer against Pittsburgh. Strome was never really at the top of his game. Andrew Kopp started the playoffs well, then kind of faded. The kid line was, up and down. And then, of course, we mentioned pretty much everybody. Mika Zibanejad, Chris Kreider. Mika was really good the entire playoffs, but Kreider had his ups and downs. I thought Jacob Trouba certainly had his ups and downs. There's times where he was outstanding. There's other times where, what happened on the game-winning goal in this game was happening to Trouba, frequently. And in this game, he just kind of got burnt by Steven Stamkos. Very unfortunate there. And yeah, just one of those series where, unfortunately, the Rangers' best players were not at their best, except for Igor Shesterkin. I thought he was absolutely fantastic. This game actually kind of reminded me, this Game 6 game here tonight, kind of reminded me of a game against the Toronto Maple Leafs earlier in the regular season. I believe it was still October, couldn't have been later than November. But the Rangers, early in the season, the narrative was that they could not win games unless Igor Shesterkin carried them. And to be fair, very early in the season, that was pretty much true. I mean, Igor Shesterkin was carrying his team on his back for October and part of November as well. But the Rangers had a game in Toronto against the Maple Leafs very early in the season, and it was just like this game. The Maple Leafs just skated circles around the Rangers. The rink was tilted the entire game, scoring chances left and right for the Leafs. It goes into overtime, and Panarin scored in that one to give the Rangers a very improbable win. But I kind of got those kinds of vibes in this game between the Rangers and Lightning here, where the Rangers, it was just the very definition of just barely doing enough to just barely hang on and stay in the fight and give yourself a chance to win it late. I thought that they were actually going to pull this out because it just gave me the exact same vibes that I got from that game against Toronto earlier in the season, where Igor Shesterkin is carrying the team, and then it just takes one chance to tie the game or win the game or whatever it might be. But the Rangers, they were there. It felt like the counterpunch was eventually going to happen. It did happen on that goal by Vatrano. But again, the Rangers' just inability to be at their best in the shift that follows the goal. And that is something that needs to become a point of emphasis this offseason. The players have to take it upon themselves. We'll see if they name a captain. Whoever the next captain is should talk about that with his teammates. We'll see if the coaching staff makes that a point of emphasis. But I'm not kidding. I mean, I think it was literally episode 2, the first time that I mentioned that, where the Rangers look a little bit, just kind of off kilter in the shift that immediately follows a goal. And that's something that's going to need to change going forward. I think something else that really stands out to me as far as this playoff run is concerned, there were a couple too many games where the Rangers just were not at their best. They just laid an egg, or maybe not necessarily laid an egg, but just were not sharp, and they obviously paid the price for it in the end here. If you're going to win the Stanley Cup, you just can't get away with that. You might be able to get away with one, maybe two clunkers in your run to the Stanley Cup, but the Rangers had too many. I mean, this one was kind of a clunker, even though they were in it late and had a chance. Game 4 of this series was definitely a clunker. I would say, against Pittsburgh, the 2 games in Pittsburgh, games 3 and 4, those were clunkers. Game 5 against the Carolina Hurricanes, those were clunkers. Now, obviously, the good news is the Rangers dug deep, and they battled back in those games, and in many cases won some of those games, or won the game that followed the game in question. But, you just have to learn that lesson, and I hope and think that the Rangers will learn that lesson. You got to be razor sharp every single game in the Stanley Cup playoffs. You can't take a game off. You can't take a period off. You can't even take a shift off. That's what it's going to take if you're going to emerge from this just insane 16-team tournament that we're all privileged enough to get to watch every single season. And, fingers crossed once again that the lesson has been learned, and they'll just come back that much stronger and that much more ready to go next season in the playoffs. Something else that I'll definitely remember about this playoff, I'm going to remember a ton of stuff about this playoff run, but certainly the play of Igor Shesterkin. He's proved throughout this entire run here that he is as clutch as he is talented. He was absolutely sensational in the games where the Rangers truly needed him to be at his best, including this game here tonight. The only reason this game was even close, the only reason the Rangers had a shot at it, potentially winning it, late in this game, is because Igor Shesterkin was awesome. Prior to this game tonight, Igor was 5-0 with the Rangers facing elimination, and he played excellent hockey in all 5 of those games. So we got an unbelievable goalie. It's not lost on me how lucky we are to go from Henrik Lundqvist straight to Igor Shesterkin, and just can't wait to see what this kid can do going forward. Hopefully as a part of many more deep New York Ranger playoff runs to come here. Just can't wait to see what he can do. I think something else, you guys got to tell me if you do this too, but anytime there's a situation like this, the Rangers lose to Tampa Bay here, and they're out of the playoffs, and obviously now it's going to be Tampa, Colorado for the Stanley Cup. But I always just kind of think about different scenarios that could have happened in this playoff run here. If you guys think back to the first round, Tampa Bay was down 3-2 to the Toronto Maple Leafs in the first round. They were down by a goal in Game 6 in the third period. They tied it. It went to overtime, and Tampa Bay eventually won it. What happens if Toronto either holds them off in regulation there or beats them in overtime and knocks the Lightning out of the playoffs in the first round? Well, Toronto then goes on to play Florida, and then, you think like, well, Tampa Bay, they swept Florida. Would Toronto sweep Florida? Would it be a more competitive series and then Toronto wins? Maybe Florida finds a way to beat Toronto. And then the Rangers end up playing either Toronto or Florida. And then what happens there? Could the Rangers have knocked Florida or Toronto, whichever team got that far, could they have knocked them out of the playoffs in this round and advance to the Stanley Cup Final? And then what happens if the Rangers play the Colorado Avalanche, do they actually beat them and win the Stanley Cup? That kind of stuff can pretty much drive you insane, but I can never help but, it's like a choose-your-own-adventure book, basically. I can never help but think, how things could have been different. 2014 is a great example. Blackhawks and Kings going into overtime in Game 7 in the Western Conference Final. Kings win. Then they beat the Rangers. What happens if the Blackhawks win that game in overtime? Do the Rangers beat the Blackhawks? And again, you'll never know for sure. That's part of what drives you crazy. But as a sports fan, I can never help but just kind of think of these different scenarios in my head, at least a little bit. And who knows? Who knows what would have happened? But Tampa Bay Lightning, they're on the verge of a dynasty. It is what it is. It's an excellent team. And the Rangers, I think they proved they're not that far away from being just as good as Tampa, but they're just not there quite yet. Another reason for optimism, and I already see people talking about this on social media and whatnot, but, obviously the Rangers, very young team. Their core is signed long-term. They've got some great players. They've got some players that are continuing to develop and should be that much better next season. And that's all well and good and everything. And I absolutely do expect this team to be a bona fide cup contender for, a good chunk of years to come here. But the thing that just really kind of sticks in your craw, at least for me, is, first of all, how close they were. They were this close to going to the Cup Finals and who knows, perhaps even winning it. So that's number one. Number two, though, the Rangers, they might win a Stanley Cup 2 years from now, 3 years from now, maybe even next year. Maybe they win the Stanley Cup next year. But I wanted to see this team win the Stanley Cup. Is Frank Vatrano going to be back with the Rangers next season? I hope he is. By that same token, I also understand they can't overextend themselves and really overpay for somebody like Frank Vatrano. Is Andrew Kopp going to be back next season? Ryan Strome? Kevin Rooney? It's just such a likable team. And right now that not everybody's coming back. That's just a cold, hard fact of the NHL. It's a cold, hard fact of professional sports. There's always going to be some change, and certainly some of these UFAs are going to be on their way, and they're going to be playing somewhere else next season. So that is a bummer. Would have been really, really cool to see this particular group of players end up winning a Stanley Cup together. Definitely would have been special. That said, can't wait for next season because I think the Rangers, this was no fluke, and they should be right in the mix for many, many years to come here. But again, I just cannot thank you guys enough one more time here for being on this ride with me. It's crazy. We start in the postseason. We go through the 82-game regular season. In this particular postseason, we had, 20 postseason games to watch together. Just an absolute freaking blast, man. Just have so much fun watching Ranger hockey with you guys, talking Ranger hockey with you guys. And listen, if you've been listening to this podcast from its inception, or you're kind of new, you just kind of jumped on board here during the playoff run, definitely stick around. We tend to have a lot of fun here together. Ranger fans, we all got to stick together. We've only got one cup in 82 years, all right? Ranger fans need to stick together, and it's just a really cool family, really cool community that we've kind of built here at Locked On New York Rangers and the Locked On NHL network as a whole. But we're going to keep rolling this offseason. We're going to do a bunch of really fun, interesting off-season episodes. I'm going to do my best to line up some really cool guests for you guys. I'm sure we'll get at least a couple of guests in here in the days and weeks to come here. But we're going to get into impending free agency, talk about which free agents the Rangers should look to re-sign as far as their own guys, which free agents they could look to pursue. Certainly, we'll talk a little bit about the NHL draft. We're going to get into how every single New York Ranger fared this season. We'll talk awards. We'll have our top 10 Ranger wins of the season. We do that countdown every single year, so I'll do that. And we're also going to have a very special episode where I read stories from you guys, where you were, what you were doing, who you were with when Artemi Panarin scored in overtime in Game 7 against the Pittsburgh Penguins. I've already heard from a bunch of you. If you haven't shared your story with me yet, definitely feel free to send it in. That's going to be a really fun episode. Just love hearing from you guys. I've already heard some really cool stories from you guys, and like I said, that will be a future episode for sure. We'll let the dust settle, and then we'll do that episode at some point, probably within the next week or two at the most. But that will do it for today, guys. Once again, thank you all so much. If you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com, and definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well at LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that is at LO_NY_Rangers. Thanks again, guys. I'll see you next time. Thanks for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On NHL. Locked On NHL covers the playoffs like no other. Hear the latest news and opinions from local experts every Monday through Friday. In our next episode, we're going to do a look back at this pretty amazing New York Ranger playoff run that they experienced. And as for the Locked On NHL podcast, it is free and available wherever you get your podcasts.